5th pick.
There's going to be a microscopic eye, even more intensified, on Bronny James because of his dad.
Every NBA locker room runs on an unwritten code. Nobody posts it on the wall, but the second you walk through that door, you feel it. Roster spots are sacred. 15 per team, that's it. And every single one of those spots sits on top of hundreds of dreams that never got a real shot.
In the NBA, met him.
I just looked it up. G-League top scorers, points per game. I went through 50 and there's no Bronny James in there. He had 140-point game. Other games were 1. So now you do the math, and it's not going to be in the top 50. I don't even know who is this. Bryce McGowan, Elijah Harkles, Trey Alexander, DJ Davidson. Never heard of these kids. But they're dropping 30 a night in G League. Why is Bronny sitting on the bench?
Bronny James is trending again, but this time it is not because of a highlight, a big game, or even some feel-good development storyline. It is because fans started noticing something that felt off. And once people noticed it, the conversation around the Lakers and Bronny got a lot louder very quickly. That is the thing about being attached to one of the biggest names in basketball history. Every minute gets watched, every rotation gets questioned, and every decision gets interpreted like it means something bigger than just one game. And right now, a lot of fans are looking at Bronny James and asking the same uncomfortable question. Why does it feel like the Lakers trust other players more than they trust him? That is where this whole thing starts to get messy, because on paper, Bronny James looks like he should be part of the conversation. He's in the NBA, he has a guaranteed contract, he wears a Lakers jersey, he is around the team every night. If you just looked at the paperwork and the branding, you would assume this is a normal young guard trying to learn the league. But the reality on the floor has looked a lot more complicated than that. And the more fans have paid attention, the more they have started noticing a pattern that is hard to ignore.
Bronny James, he's 7 for 28 in 4 preseason games from the field. He's 2 for 13, I believe, from three-point range. He's got 8 assists and 8 turnovers. He's moving into year 2. This guy is not an NBA player.
It's not about the money at that point. My point months ago was that because of who you are, one of the top 2 players in the history of basketball, in my estimation, there's an immense amount of pressure that comes with that for his son. And when he talked like that, and what have you, anything that goes awry as it pertains to his son, there's going to be a microscopic eye, even more intensified, on Bronny James.
That pattern is simple. When the game matters, Bronny is usually not the guy getting the call. That is the strange part. In a league where roster spots are precious and every bench decision sends a message, the Lakers seem to be showing the world exactly where Bronny stands in their trust hierarchy. And once people started noticing that, the reactions came fast, because NBA fans know the difference between real development minutes and controlled low-pressure minutes. They know the difference between a young player being trusted through mistakes and a young player being kept on the sideline until the outcome is already decided. And with Bronny, a lot of people are saying the latter is what they are seeing. The source lays that out very directly. When the Lakers actually needed bodies, when the rotation was short, when Luka Doncic was out, when Gabe Vincent was unavailable, when Austin Reeves was dealing with issues, and when the roster needed somebody to step up, Bronny was not the answer they went to first. That is one of the biggest signals in the entire story, because a team trying to win does not usually hesitate to use a player if they believe he can help. Coaches are usually pragmatic that way. They are not sentimental when a game is on the line. They play the guys they trust. And that's what makes this situation so interesting, because the source says that when the Lakers had a chance to give Bronny a meaningful run against the Phoenix Suns, they went in a different direction. They used other players first. They leaned on Nick Smith Jr. before Bronny got real minutes. That decision said a lot without anybody having to say much at all. Nick Smith Jr. is not some fully established star. He is not a household name. He was already cut by Charlotte before finishing his rookie path. He has questions around him too, but the Lakers still trusted him before they trusted Bronny in that moment. That is the part fans noticed. It wasn't just that Bronny sat, it was when he sat. If the game is close, if the pressure is real, if the score matters, and if the team is still searching for a spark, and your young player is still not the one getting the nod, then the message is pretty clear. You are not currently in the rotation that the coaches truly rely on. That doesn't mean the story is over. It doesn't mean he can never become a real contributor, but it does mean that right now, the Lakers are not treating him like someone who can be trusted to help them win important minutes. And in the NBA, trust is everything. That's why this story has gotten so much attention. It's not just about Bronny James, it's about what roster spots mean in a league where there are only 15 of them per team. Those spots are not symbolic. They are not just for branding or family narratives. They are valuable, and every single one of them could belong to somebody who is chasing the same dream and might actually be ready to help a team win right now. That's what makes the criticism sting. People are asking whether Bronny is occupying a space that could have gone to a more ready player.
How do you feel about the way Bronny James played?
So, it's unfair that he is there, is what I'm going to say. I think it's clear, like, the reason why he's there is because LeBron, has kind of made sure he's there. He's just not an NBA player. He looks, in my mind, like almost like worse than he was last year.
That's a hard conversation, but it's one that the league has all the time. The source also points out that these aren't even high-pressure developmental minutes in most cases. A lot of Bronny's time has come late, after the game is already decided, when the pressure is basically gone, and both teams are just riding out the clock. Those are not the moments where coaches are really testing whether a young player can hold up under fire. Those are the minutes where players can show energy, effort, and flashes, but not necessarily prove they can handle a real playoff-type situation. And even in those minutes, the critics say he hasn't done enough to force a bigger role. That is the thing that really fuels the frustration. If a player is getting limited chances and then doesn't stand out in those limited chances, the conversation gets worse very quickly. Because then people stop saying he just needs more time and start saying if the opportunity was there and he still didn't separate himself, then what exactly are we waiting for? That's the tension surrounding Bronny right now. Fans are not just asking whether he is young. Of course he is young. They are asking whether the Lakers can afford to keep giving him a spot if he is not yet part of the main competitive plan. And that's where the roster math starts to matter. The Lakers aren't rebuilding in the traditional sense. They are trying to win now. They need depth, they need shooting, they need perimeter defense, they need players who can absorb playoff pressure. That means every single roster spot is supposed to be functional. Every player should be able to fit into the larger competitive structure. But the source argues that Bronny currently looks more like an open question than a dependable piece. And when a team is in win-now mode, open questions can become expensive very quickly. That's why this keeps turning into a bigger discussion than just Bronny himself. Fans are not just reacting to his stat line, they are reacting to what the Lakers' choices are telling them. If the team keeps giving him non-meaningful minutes while other players get the chance to help in real situations, then that says the organization doesn't really view him as part of the core rotation. That doesn't necessarily mean they're done with him, it just means they are not at the point where they trust him enough to roll with him when it counts. And the stats don't help. The source points out that Bronny has had a very rough statistical run. Low scoring, limited assists, turnovers that outnumber productive flashes. A lot of his production is coming in games that were already out of reach. A lot of his shooting numbers do not look remotely close to the kind of efficiency NBA teams want from a guard trying to carve out a real role. That is where the criticism becomes more concrete. It's not just a vibe, it's numbers plus rotation decisions plus the timing of when he gets on the floor. That combination is what really makes fans feel like something strange is going on. Some people read it as protection, some people read it as hesitation, some people read it as the Lakers trying to manage the situation carefully because of who Bronny is and who his father is. And that part can't be ignored either. LeBron James is still the biggest gravitational force in the whole conversation. As long as he's on the roster, there is a layer of context and pressure around Bronny that most young players would never have to deal with. That context is real. It changes how every decision is perceived. It changes how every minute is discussed. It changes how every failure is framed.
It hasn't been any improvement.
Too small of a sample size to say that he got
But you
worse.
still see the same kind of stuff, like the drive left and then get up in the air, and then on the way down trying to throw like a lob that gets stolen. His three-point shot doesn't really look great either on the open catch and shoots.
But the source makes an important point there too. The protection around Bronny is not going to last forever. LeBron's timeline is finite. The organization knows that. Everyone knows that. Once that era ends, Bronny will no longer get the benefit of being part of a father-son story inside the same locker room. At that point, everything becomes much more blunt. He will be judged like everybody else. And if the early results stay the same, then the questions are only going to get louder. That is why some fans are already looking past the emotional angle and asking the practical one. Is this roster spot being used in the best way for the Lakers? Not in the best way for a storyline, not in the best way for social media, in the best way for winning basketball games. That is the real question. Because when the playoffs come, no one cares about marketing. No one cares about legacy protection. No one cares about how cool the narrative is. Teams need defenders who can stay connected, guards who can hit open shots, wings who can understand their role, and players who can survive the physicality of meaningful basketball. That is why the source emphasizes that Bronny has not yet reached the trust level needed for that kind of responsibility. That is not an insult, it is an evaluation. And in the NBA, evaluations are harsh because the margins are so thin. One spot, one rotation, one decision can separate a playoff team from a second-round exit. Front offices know that. Coaches know that. Players definitely know that. If a guy is not currently helping the rotation, people inside the league notice immediately. Nobody has to announce it. It just becomes obvious. The minutes tell the story. The substitutions tell the story. The late-game choices tell the story. That is where Bronny's situation gets uncomfortable. Because if he were really forcing the issue, the minutes would look different. If he were dominating his opportunities, they would be harder to ignore. If he were giving the Lakers real energy, real defense, and real two-way value, the conversation would be a lot more positive. The source makes that point bluntly. If he had been standing out in those early chances, there would not be this much doubt. The fact that there is doubt is part of the story. And that is what fans are reacting to. They're not just reacting to the stat line. They're reacting to the feeling that the Lakers are treating Bronny like a player they want to keep around for the future, but not a player they fully trust in the present. That's a weird place for any young guard to be. Not good enough to play in meaningful minutes, but still too visible to ignore. Not part of the main plan, but still part of the conversation because of the name on the back of the jersey. That limbo is hard. It's especially hard in a market like Los Angeles, where every detail gets magnified. If Bronny were on a smaller market team, maybe the conversation would be quieter. Maybe people would just call it normal development and move on. But on the Lakers, every roster choice becomes a statement. Every minute gets analyzed. Every benching becomes a storyline. Every late-game decision becomes evidence in an argument about whether he belongs.
It's you. You know the attention you automatically are going to bring to him. So to combine that with putting him in that predicament, you're asking us not to cover the sport. That's pushing it. So when I was talking about as a father, I wasn't talking about Bronny. I was like, forget him. He's going to be all right. I believe he's going to be a good NBA player someday. I really believe in Bronny. I think he's got potential. But I was saying to LeBron, you know better because you know what we got to do. Why are you doing that? That's what I meant when I said as a father. If you have a problem, as I said, and this is why Rich Paul and I don't particularly speak much or anything like that, but I always have respect for Rich Paul. And this typifies.
That is what the source is really saying beneath all the numbers and the criticism. The Lakers do not appear to trust Bronny James to help them win right now. And until that changes, the pressure is not going away. That doesn't mean he can't develop. It doesn't mean he can't eventually become a real NBA player. It doesn't mean the door is closed forever. A lot of guards need time. A lot of young players need reps, confidence, and patience before they're ready to be real contributors. That's all true. But development only matters when the staff actually gives you enough trust to develop inside real games. If that trust is missing, then the learning curve gets much harder. And that is why fans are noticing something strange. The story is not just about one bad night or one bad stat line. It's about a repeating pattern. It's about who gets called, when they get called, and what that says about where Bronny stands on the team. That is why the conversation feels so much bigger than it should for a second-year guard trying to earn his place. Because the reality is, it is bigger. It's about value. It's about trust. It's about whether a guaranteed roster spot is being used in the best possible way for a team trying to win right now. That's the pressure the Lakers can't escape, and it all keeps circling back to the same basic question: who helps you win? Right now, the Lakers seem to be answering that question with someone else's name before Bronny's. That's the story. That's the strange thing fans noticed, and that's why the heat around him is not going away anytime soon. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to subscribe for more Lakers updates, Bronny James coverage, and NBA commentary just like this. And drop your thoughts in the comments, because this conversation is only getting louder from here.